As usual, give YouTube a moment to collect itself, but I think we should be all right. I am Drew Badger, the founder of EnglishAnyone.com and the English Fluency Guide. Welcome to another live video here on YouTube. I've been working on my book, The Strangest Fluency Secret, and I didn't make a video last week because I was just busy writing. But my goal is to release Chapter 5 today, or maybe tomorrow at the latest. I'll see how much time I have, but the chapter is basically finished, but now I'm going back and making sure I edit things and make it as good as it can be. This is the longest chapter so far, and there are quite a few ideas, although it's kind of a simple foundation for it, but there's a lot to explain because we now go into the practical step-by-step ways of developing fluency and the first piece of this. So in this video, I wanted to talk a little bit about the chapter. And if anybody has any questions or people who have already gotten the book and started reading it, if you have any feedback so far, or there are things you would like to see, questions you have, or anything you didn't understand about the first 4 chapters before I release this new one, and maybe there's anything to update, let me know. But again, it is nice to see everybody here. I'll go through chat. Looks like some people are already joining us, and then we'll get right into today's video. So I'll also keep my eye on chat as we go, but nice to see it's working. George, nice to see you there. Saeed, hello. Good to see you there. Ahmad and Hassan and Edwin and JH and Silvana, if I'm pronouncing hopefully all of those correctly. All right, so let's get into it. Wi-Fi, nice to see you there. So the basic idea for the book, when we're talking about getting practical about how to actually build fluency, and these are the things that I discovered, and you see that process going through as you read the book. Also, if you do not have it yet, you can click on the link in the description below this video to get it. But lots of people are sending me great feedback so far, which I'm very happy about. People are understanding the ideas, and it's already starting to transform their way of thinking so they can become more confident speakers. And yeah, it's been actually a really interesting process. It's been very difficult writing it, though. Every chapter I have to think very carefully about how I explain things, because this is really over 20 years of information I'm packing into one book and laying it out in a way that can help people really understand things. Tom, nice to see you there. What do we have here? Got some Nihongo here. Konnichiwa, minasan. Olympia, nice to see you there. And Pedro, thanks for all your help. It's my pleasure. And me says hello. Olivia says you are great. Well, glad to hear it. All right, so here's basically what's happening for fluency. I'm going to try to make this very simple across chapters 5 and chapter 6, because these two are connected. And even chapter 5, it's really so long, I thought about breaking it into 2 different chapters. But I want to put it all together, release it that way for the first version of the book, and see what people think. So I'd like to know if you think it's too much information or it could be broken down. But the ideas for chapter 5 and chapter 6, I'm going to keep this very simple here, but this is what's going on. So for fluent, let me have a better marker here. So fluent communication, I discovered it was really 2 things in particular that I needed for actual fluent communication. So this is not just learning the language, but actually being able to speak. So there were 2 different things I needed, and they're covered in the 2 chapters of the book. So the first one is in chapter 5, and the second one is in chapter 6. And chapter 5 as well is kind of broken into 2 different pieces. So hopefully I explained this well in the book. We'll see if people get it. This is really my first time laying all of this out in one kind of coherent, or hopefully coherent, hopefully something that makes sense for people. But the first part of this is really making sure we've got fluent sentences. So this is how you can continue to speak without hesitating or needing to translate as you do it. So I've talked about this on the channel quite a few times. It's like a train moving forward, and the train puts the track down on the trail or on the ground or whatever as the train moves forward. So if you have that ability to make fluent sentences, and usually what stops people from communicating is they basically don't feel confident about their individual words. And so obviously, like a chain, if the chain has a weak link, the chain is going to break. And if you're trying to express a complete thought, but you're not sure or certain about any of the vocabulary there, or a grammar point or pronunciation or whatever, that's what breaks up or prevents you basically from using fluent sentences. So because the words, the individual vocabulary, the words and phrases are not, you're not basically certain about those, of course, you're going to struggle to make fluent sentences. So this is the beginning of that. I'm going to rewrite this and make this a little bit easier to understand. So chapter 5 is really about making fluent sentences. Oops, fluent sentences, and that's actually broken into two different parts. So the first part of this is I'll give you like a couple of examples of vocabulary here just to show you how this works, although I go into more detail in the book, but I thought this would be helpful for people just understanding it, and also for me, if anybody has any questions about this before I release the chapter, I can tweak it or adjust it or anything if people don't get the idea. But let's say often people, typically learners, might know a word but not be certain about it. And when I mean certain, I don't just mean you can understand it when you hear it. I actually mean you feel confident enough to say the word, and typically you know the word well enough to use it in a variety of situations or a variety of ways, like you really know that word very well. So let's say we, just as an example, begin with a word like heavy. And when we're talking about learning vocabulary, probably everybody watching this video would know this word. So it's not like a high level word, it's not an advanced word, but there are some more advanced uses of the word that people might not know. My daughter, my older daughter Aria, actually mentioned one of these last night. Heavy breathing. So if you contrast regular breathing, like you can't hear it really loudly, but heavy breathing, that's heavy breathing. And so we can hear not only something being light or heavy, but now we can have an example of heavy breathing. Another example would be a word like heavy hitter. So a heavy hitter, this is coming from something like baseball or even something like boxing, but a heavy hitter is someone who is like a powerful person or very capable at doing something. So you have maybe some regular people who are quite good at doing something, but then, we've got some heavy hitters, like some famous people or some very good, very talented people coming to do something heavy hitting, like a heavy hitting individual, or just talking about them as a heavy hitter. So you can notice how this becomes more of a D sound when I say it. So I'm speaking American English, and so we pronounce it more of a D sound, heavy hitter. So British pronunciation would be more like hitta, like that, like more of a T sound, because that is the T there. But they drop the ER at the end. So in American English, we say like but British is like hit, like they don't say the sound, a hitta. Anyway, obviously there are many ways to pronounce it, even within American and British English, but you get the idea. So the point is, when we look at things like this, seeing examples not only of the word itself, but a variety of them, and I'll show you how to get this in chapter 5, but this reveals two different problems, and this is the two different things I talk about in the chapter. So the first one is actually knowing the word meaning, and by the word I mean that word usage for a particular situation. So let's say we have a word like as, and I use this example in the book also. But if you have a word like as, what many learners will try to do is get every use of that word and try to memorize them or study them or whatever. But native speakers don't learn the language that way. What they do, especially as children, is they will learn a particular use and maybe get a couple of examples. If they have a good teacher, that teacher will give them a few good examples to really help them understand that word, and then they will move on to other uses later. But the point is not to try to memorize every example of something. We might have an example like as good as it gets, or as hot as the sun, or something like that. So we're making a comparison using the word as, or another example might be I work as an astronaut, or I work as a salesman. So there we're talking about I'm doing a particular job, or I might use this marker as a head scratcher. So I'm kind of employing something and talking about this thing filling a particular role. So the point when I'm teaching is not to give you an example of a word like as it's quite a conceptual idea. It really needs to be attached to particular contexts, and that's how you learn it. So we talk about that in chapter 5. So again, that's the first part of this where we're talking about the meaning of particular words and understanding them very well. So if you learn a word like heavy, and you just hear this from a translation, or you just get a definition like something is light or something is heavy, then you only really know that, and you might not feel very confident when you hear things like heavy breathing, heavy hitter, heavy rain, heavy petting, lots of different examples where we might talk about heavy, like heavy betting. So heavy betting, when we're talking about to bet on something, like let's say we go to the racetrack, we're watching the horses run around the racetrack for racing, and there's heavy betting on a particular race or something like that. Like a lot of people are doing it. So again, as you get multiple examples, it's the varied examples, what I call naturally varied review. You've probably heard me talk about this before, so I talk about this in great detail in chapter 5. But this idea here, where as we're getting these varied examples of things, we're learning two things. So number one is the meaning of the word, and that meaning as connected in like a variety of things. So heavy could mean a lot, like heavy rain. Or it could be like heavy traffic, like we've got lots of cars, heavy traffic. Same idea. So like, oh no, there's heavy traffic on the road today. Or we could talk about light traffic in the same way. And notice as we get different varied examples, we begin making these connections, and that's what creates that network in your mind that allows you to understand things well and use them fluently. All right? So again, first thing we've got here, when we're talking about making fluent sentences, it's almost like lots of people, so heavy traffic just means lots of traffic. It could mean a traffic jam, but typically like heavy versus light, meaning we've got lots of cars on the road. It might not be a traffic jam. Typically a jam means there's some kind of blockage or it's stuck. Like we have a pipe over here and there's something blocking it, like the pipe is jammed or blocked. So a traffic jam means actually the cars are not moving. So you could have heavy traffic, but still not have a traffic jam, all right? So even in like light traffic, you actually could have a traffic jam. Like maybe there are not many cars on the road, but still you've got like there's a blockage or something like that on the road and people can't get through, all right? But you see how like, all right, Tom's getting it though. So yes, as you get more examples and you start making these connections, that's what actually helps you understand the real meaning or the core meaning or the true meaning, or just really understand something well enough to feel confident using it. You're feeling certain about the word. Okay, so it's the variety that actually helps you understand this. Now, the second part of this that's also connected to this, look at that. This is where we're actually seeing how words can be connected. Okay, so we've got the meaning, but we've also got the connections here. So when we're learning words, typically what happens with people who know a lot of vocabulary but are unable to speak, and this is that first level. Again, we're only talking about this. We'll save the discussion about chapter 6 for next time, but today we're just talking about making fluent sentences, or at least the first part of fluent communication here. But we're talking about the meaning of things and being able to connect them. That's what chapter 5 is all about. So we want to show people how to get really strong, certain understanding about the meaning of particular things, and also see how we're making connections between these different words. Because what happens when we put these two things together, and I talked about this, I think last time, but we get magnetic vocabulary. Let me put that up here as well. So magnetic vocabulary, again, if you think about, like, usually many learners will have almost in their mind a bunch of disconnected words that they don't know very well. So you might have a word like heavy or light or something like that, and you understand it at a low level or a basic level, but you don't really have a very certain understanding of it. And so when you hear new examples, it becomes more challenging to understand those things. But you notice as you get more examples of it, now we can understand, like, oh, that's interesting. Heavy traffic, heavy breathing, heavy hitter, heavy bedding. All of these examples help us really deepen our understanding of the word heavy itself. So that's the first thing we're trying to go for, which is understanding the meaning of the word really well. So if you don't know the meaning well, then of course you won't be able to use it. You can't make fluent sentences unless you have fluent vocabulary. But the magnetic idea here is, as we get examples, so natural examples of how things are used, we begin seeing how vocabulary get connected like this. All right, does that make sense? So we're looking at not only understanding the meaning very well, but we're also seeing with these various examples, these are natural examples of how the native language is used in real everyday communication, and more than just seeing some simple phrases like this. Obviously, we would probably have sentences as well. So we can build this up very easily, but it's, again, seeing different examples of how things work that really makes that vocabulary magnetic. So now we don't just have random vocabulary floating around in our head. We're actually making connections between all these things, and that's what makes them memorable and then usable as well. All right, so it's a pretty simple idea, but that is the goal for chapter 5, and I should be releasing that later today. So as soon as I finish this video, I will get back to editing and writing, and then I should be able to release that and email everybody who has the book to download the newest chapter. So again, it's a longer chapter because it's a simple idea, but there's really a lot we can do with this. And it really, it took a while for me to go through all the various examples of the different ways you can get naturally varied review and actually show you how this works. But I think people will really enjoy it. It will really help you think about things in a new way. So this is, again, the idea generally, but we go through this in much, much greater detail. Hopefully it's not too long. Early readers of the book can let me know. So if you're watching this in the future, maybe the book is already finished. But for today, the people who already have the first 4 chapters are enjoying it. If you don't have the book already and you'd like to become a more fluent communicator, you can click on the link in the description of this video to get it. But let me know if you have any questions about this. Again, it's a simple idea. I just wanted to make a quick video talking about this today and to answer any other questions that people might have, whether it's about the book or something else. Since I'm here, I can help. But I'll go back through the chat here and see if anybody has any questions about that. But let me know. So again, as I just wrap this up here, when we're talking about fluent communication, I discovered, so this is me also learning how to, not only to help people learn, but me learning Japanese as well. So there were really 2 things I needed. Chapter 5 is talking about fluent sentences, and chapter 6 goes on in addition to that. We'll talk about that next time. But if you can't make fluent sentences, this doesn't matter anyway. So again, we're trying to build this like a building with a strong foundation. If the individual pieces of things that you want to say are known well, if you understand them well, if you make them really magnetic, then speaking becomes a lot easier. All right. And then the two ways that we think about this, the first one is really understanding the meaning of words, like we're talking about understanding the meaning of heavy here with these examples. And then as you get these varied examples, it also helps you understand the connections between them. So you learn what comes before words in general or what comes after. The idea is really understanding the patterns, and that way we can actually anticipate what other people will say. So I can be in a conversation and know because someone said this word, they're probably going to say this word over here. So I can really follow people easily without trying to process so much information because I know the patterns very well. So if you prepare this way, then when you do speak, you will have much more like interesting and satisfying and smooth conversations. So again, if you want to have fluent sentences, this is how you do it. They really come from the pieces, the individual building blocks of actually having words that you know for certain. And the really great thing about all this is this happens even before you speak. So the whole idea of the book, if you're not familiar, it's called The Strangest Fluency Secret. And this is me discovering that I can actually become a confident speaker even before I say a word. And that way, instead of trying to speak to develop fluency, I'm actually developing understanding and fluency really before I say anything. And that way, when I do speak, I feel a lot more confident. All right, so let's go back through chat here, see if I missed anybody. If anybody has any questions, do let me know. So it could be about the book. Also, anyone who has read the book so far, the first 4 chapters, let me know. Did you enjoy it? Did it make sense? Was there anything, any questions or anything like that that did not make sense? So far, I haven't heard anything negative about the book, more about just people curious to know what's happening next. And so again, I'm excited to release this. This is the chapter that I've been waiting for a long time, but I couldn't just go into this first because it wouldn't make as much sense to people. And again, I explain why in the book, but hopefully people will enjoy this a lot. All right, I can't read that Arabic, but it says, "We missed you. Where have you been?" Well, I've been working on the book. Simple says hello. And Olympia says, almost like me. And Tom says, again, heavy hitter is new to me. All right, I think you got it, though. Augustin says, hi, Drew. I love your channel. Do you have an estimated date for finishing your book? Well, I didn't. The reason I didn't create it like a normal book where I'm writing it and then I make the whole thing, maybe I have a few people look at it and then release it, is because I really want to make sure everybody understands each of these pieces. There's basically a series of steps that I need people to go through in order to help them become fluent. And I think many people who are reading the book already are starting to see that transformation. But just so everybody understands what's happening, there are at least two, actually many more than this, but 2 big beliefs that stop a lot of people from becoming fluent who are maybe good students and they actually want to improve, but they have trouble because of these 2 beliefs about learning. And this is not the fault of the learners who have these things. Most people have these ideas about language learning because this is how everybody learns. But the first one is I need to The first one, I need to speak. If I can fit my head in there, I need to speak to get fluent. I need to speak to get fluent. And I go into detail in the book about how I discovered this basically alternate way of becoming fluent, where instead of we speak to become fluent, we become fluent in order to speak. That's the strangest fluency secret, and that's why I call it the strangest fluency secret, because it sounds ridiculous. So it's even worse than kind of strange, but it's just like when people hear that, they just think like, well, that sounds kind of crazy. How would you do that? So it takes time to explain that and to help people see things in a different way, and then I can finally, in chapter 5, start actually helping people learn. All right, so it takes the first half of the book for me to explain what's going on and why we learn in a particular way and how it's actually possible to do the opposite of this. So if you believe that you need to speak to get fluent, then you will be you will be always looking for people to practice with. And if you don't have anyone to practice with, you will just be stuck, because you will think, well, if I can't find anyone to talk with, maybe I live, I don't know, in a small mountain village and I don't have any native speakers to talk with, or I can't find people online, or I'm busy, I'm working, I don't really have time to talk with people anyway. There are lots of reasons why it's very difficult to become fluent if you need to speak to become fluent. So if that's true. And again, I'm not saying it's not true. What I'm saying is that there's this alternative way to do it. So instead of speaking to become fluent, you get fluent in order to speak. So that changes everything, but it sounds really unbelievable because everybody thinks that, like, well, of course you have to speak to get fluent, right? It's like practicing like anything else. And what we discover, like what I discovered and then what I reveal in the book, is that, like, no, it doesn't work like that. And the reason it doesn't work like that is because practicing for speaking is different from practicing the guitar or practicing the piano or something like that. So I explain why in the book, but they really are two different things. So yes, practice is required, but a different kind of practice is required if you want to speak. All right? So I explain why in the book, but it's almost the way I have written the book, it's a story showing you how I came to these conclusions, how I got fluent as well in Japanese, and then started teaching people the same way that I was doing it, but it takes a while to do it. So that's the first belief that people have, which is I need to speak, like I need to, as in this is the only way to do it. So what I've discovered is that it's not the only way to do it. It is one way to do it, but it's not the only way to do it. So there is an alternative, and that's what I call the strangest fluency secret, because it sounds so ridiculous. But hopefully in the future, the strangest fluency secret is actually just the normal way people learn. So that's the idea. It works, and I think people will really enjoy it, and so far people have been enjoying it as they've read the book. So the other thing is already... Now this is a trickier one here, but this is the belief that I already know that. And so for many years, I used the word understand. And this is again a tricky thing about language, where we're trying to use the best word for the situation. And for many years, I would explain this idea to people as, you just don't understand the language as well as you think you do. So you might, like, you think you know it, but you're still not certain. And certainty, I discovered, is a much better way to express this, because certainty is kind of like a, I don't know, let me draw this better. You can think about certainty more like a switch. So we'll kind of put this switch down here, like on or off. So it's never really up in the middle like that. I mean, basically either you are certain or you are not. And so you could be certain about particular things, like I understand a grammar point well, or I know how to pronounce a word. But if you're still unsure about saying it, it means you're not actually certain about that. Yeah, it's supposed to be a switch. Like you're looking at it kind of that way. Like think about it, you know, like you could turn it like that. So again, if you think that you know a word, then you will probably not review it anymore. And that's why I gave that example here, and I give a similar example in the book, like this example of heavy. So if I say, hey, do you know the word heavy? So do you know the word heavy? Do you understand the word heavy? Most people watching this channel would say, yes, I understand what that means. So they recognize it when they hear it. But as soon as I give something new, like heavy petting, I bet most of the people watching this video does not know what this means. And so again, the idea is that we take something and we want to become certain about it by knowing that thing really well. It's not just understanding the word. The point is not only when I hear someone say it, do I understand them? Do I recognize it? Do I feel certain using that thing? Do I feel good about grammar, pronunciation, usage, intonation, whatever, anything? If I'm uncertain, I will not be able to speak. So this was my problem personally, and this has been, in my experience, the problem for most people trying to learn. So if they are uncertain about something, they will either try to express it in a different way, or they will just not speak or do whatever. But this is really the core issue that stops a lot of people from expressing themselves. They're just not certain about something. So again, I used to say you don't really understand it, or you don't know it as well as you think you do. And this is not, it's not like a bad thing. It's just, it's kind of like a limited understanding of something where you have a basic definition or a translation of a word, but you're not actually able to use it well. You should look up, I'll let you Google this. You can see what heavy petting is if you're curious what that means. Anyway, so these are the two big things that I cover in addition to other beliefs that people might have about learning that actually stop them from improving. Okay, so if you think, oh, I say, hey class, today we're going to cover the word heavy, and you say, oh, well, I already know that word, but then I introduce something that you don't know, then you are stopping yourself from becoming fluent. So again, it's understanding the word itself and also understanding how the word connects with other words, like words that come before it or words that come after it. Like if we learn a word like free, we could have like I could be home free, or free lunch, or free ride, or a free turn, or all kinds of things like that. And natives understand because they've heard all of these different examples. And what we do in the book, what we're talking about, the actual, the chapter title of 5 is How to Learn Faster Than a Native. And so what we're doing is understanding how basically understanding works. And if we know how to do this, then we can get faster or get fluent faster or learn fluent faster than a native because we can do it more efficiently than they do. All right. So most natives, especially children, are not very efficient with their learning. So even though many people believe, so this is another one of those beliefs that people have about language learning, they believe that children get fluent faster, like children have this magical ability to understand language. But really what's happening, excuse me, is that children are just spending lots of time getting lots of input like this, but it's not very efficient. So I know, for example, as a parent, I might be watching a movie with my children and they understand like 10 or 20% of it. And so there's lots of information hitting them that they just don't know. But that information kind of goes into their brain a little bit, and then maybe later they hear another example or they understand something, and that's where it finally clicks for them. That's where they get what I call in the book that aha moment of understanding, where they actually feel like, okay, now I understand what something means. Okay? So again, these two ideas, if you think I already know that word, most people I could probably give an example of something, and not even an obscure example, like a rare one, like heavy traffic, heavy bedding, heavy petting. All of these things, they're actually quite commonly used. And so if you don't have examples of those and you don't learn them systematically, then it's much more difficult for you to understand. And that's why you will have this experience where, well, of course I know what a word means, and I'm not going to learn it again. Why would I do that? I already know what it means, right? But do you know, or are you certain? And so that's really the key we're looking at here. So these two different ideas. So I need to speak to get fluent. That stops a lot of people. And I know something. So if I can kind of break those beliefs and give you good ones, or like kind of positive ones that actually empower you to learn, like showing you, oh, actually you could get more examples of something and finally feel confident about using it, then that should help a lot of people learn. So again, these are the of course, we got a fire truck coming like usual. These are the kinds of things that often stop people from expressing themselves, and we solve that in the book. So if you don't have the book already, click on the link in the description below this video to get it. And you can join the early readers people who are already going through the book. So again, to finish, that was kind of a long response for Augustin's question here. I don't have a specific date when it's done, but I've been working on about a week and a half per chapter. So the chapters are already outlined, but I'm going back and making sure I write them well, and it takes time to think about things and organize the information. Again, because this is 20 years of helping people learn, and I'm putting it all into one book. And I have to make sure like the ideas are simple and I express them in a logical way. And it's the first time I've written a book, really. So it's been a challenge for me. And every time I begin editing a new chapter, I think, oh, this one is going to be easy. And then it's not. But chapter 5 in particular, because it's long, it's the longest one so far in the book. It might be the longest one in the whole book. We'll see. But we'll also see if people enjoy reading it and they're able to follow it without feeling tired or confused or whatever, because again, we go through a lot of things in the book. Gina says, hello, as ours says, hello, Drew, everyone. All right, Tom's got it. Julian says, hi, teacher and people from Colombia. Gina says, does chapter 5 have some of these examples? Yes. So chapter 5 gives you lots of different examples. The book is not really a textbook in the sense that I'm trying to teach you particular things. I'm trying to show you how to learn. And so I give you examples that then you can use for your particular situation, because each person will have different things that they're uncertain about. So you might want to know more about some grammar thing. Other people maybe want to know vocabulary better or pronunciation or whatever. But I show you how to do all of that in the book. That's, again, chapter 5 is where we really get practical with laying out specific steps that we do. So Azra says, I haven't been able to see you in a while. It's good to be with you today. Well, welcome. Learn English with Alex says, hi. Sergio says hello again. Hello, it sounded awkward to me at the beginning. Yes. Tom, let me know if you get it, though. So, again, it sounds weird. It sounds unbelievable and strange that I would tell people, oh, you actually don't need to speak to become fluent. And I know, like, I'm not even really saying you don't need to speak, because obviously the goal is speaking. You want to get there. But a lot more of the improvement can happen while you're learning than most people think. So it's a different way of approaching fluency. Duong says, hello from Vietnam. And Julian, another wrong belief, you would say belief. I need to migrate to a foreign country to speak English. Correct. Yes. So again, you don't have to live in a foreign country because, number one, you don't have to speak in order to become fluent. It's useful. It's helpful if you can. But if you think about spending time trying to do something, spending time speaking, if I have an hour to do that, like I'm really just talking about whatever is happening. Maybe I'm using vocabulary I already know. Hopefully I'm learning something new from the people I'm speaking with. That's ideal. Like if I'm speaking with, like people who speak better than I do, like native speakers, then they're almost accidentally giving me new examples of vocabulary I should know. But then also we have to make sure that of course we get another another fire truck or whatever. So it's nice if we can speak, but it's just not necessary. So also because of that, you don't need to live around native speakers. Now, there certainly are English speakers all over the place in many different countries. And again, even here in Japan, I can find people to speak English with if I want to, including many Japanese people, or maybe not so many where I am, or they might be a little bit shy, but yeah, so you don't need to live in an English-speaking country in order to do it. We also know that, and that's one of the things I talk about in the first chapter of the book, which is lots of people, even the ones who do live in English-speaking countries, still struggle to speak. So what's the problem here? What is the unifying factor? And that is that it doesn't matter where you live or even how much you speak if you're not certain about your vocabulary. So if you're not certain about what you want to say, then it doesn't matter where you live. That's why I know people who live even around here in Japan who have been here for many years, many longer than I have, but they still don't speak Japanese very well. Let's see. Jack says it's a really helpful. Glad to hear it. Breathtaking scenes. Hopefully, tell me why I'm stuck when I'm speaking, even if I understand super good. So again, like understanding something well is different from feeling certain about it. And that's what we talk about. Again, this is that idea of like, why do I struggle to speak if I know the vocabulary well? Well, there's only like two options there. Either you're lying to yourself, like you really like actually know that you don't speak or don't know things very well, or you actually just you don't recognize the problem, and it's usually the second one. Most people aren't like lying to themselves about it. They actually don't realize that knowing a word, being able to recognize it, is different from being able to use it confidently. And so in a conversation, and I talk about this in, what is that, chapter 3, I think, where if I'm speaking with someone while the other person is talking, I don't need to understand every word to follow what they're saying, and it's much easier for me to process that while I listen to them. But when I speak, I should feel quite certain about my vocabulary. If I don't feel certain, I'm probably not going to say things, or I will try to express them differently or whatever. But that's the trick for making that switch here about I already know something. You actually have to be thinking, wait a minute, I'm actually not certain about something. So just like we have this little on-off switch over here, I should actually not have it going up in the middle. That doesn't really make much sense. But let's say it's kind of like this. All right, so we got the switch going on if you feel certain, or it's off if you don't feel certain. So that's how we know like that kind of switch in your brain is actually what's allowing you to speak or not. So either your brain is like, oh yeah, I feel certain about that and I can talk, or you do not, in which case you don't speak. All right. So yes, like lots of good ideas, and there are quite a few in addition to these, but these are really like the two major ones that stop people from being able to improve, even though they could. So you don't need to live with natives, you don't need to speak, and you also should know your vocabulary better. That's really what's stopping you. Let's see, and Hassan says, I can have aha moment about everything except phrasal verbs. They're so confusing. You should look at my channel for the visual guide to phrasal verbs, or just search my channel for phrasal verbs and you'll see examples of that. But phrasal verbs are actually quite easy to understand when you can see them. That's the whole point of creating a visual guide, is to make sure that you can recognize them by seeing them. But phrasal verbs are actually one of the easier things to understand, depending on how you learn them. But if you're just trying to learn or memorize a bunch of random phrasal verbs, it will be more difficult for you. But search my channel and you will see lots of good examples of them, especially the actual program, the Visual Guide to Phrasal Verbs, or even Fluent for Life has that. But you actually get to see how these things work, and that's the same way native children learn them. As says, so you may feel some anxiety or fear that you might speak incorrectly. Yeah, so that's a problem for a lot of people, and that's another idea about not having certainty when you speak. So if you're worried about making mistakes, it means you're uncertain about your vocabulary. So you should probably get certain, and that's pretty easy to do. Let's see, we've got Tom again. それはもう分かっています. I'm just practicing. Gotcha. All right, let's see. And I can't, what is that? Zulfikar says, talking about speaking English, for me as non-English speaker, it's hard to translate a word or sentences in my mind quickly when talking, like I have to translate from my language into English. Yes, so this is another big problem for people, and the book shows you how to solve that. So if you don't want to translate anymore, you want to think in English, speak in English, and actually express yourself, that's what the book tells you how to do. So we go through it step by step. Chapter 5, which should be available later today or tomorrow at the latest, hopefully, unless something happens to me, we'll see. Or I think like, wait a minute, now I like really need to reorganize something about the chapter. Then it should be pretty soon, but hopefully. Perhaps what should I do, says Breathtaking Scenes. Read the book. Honestly, that's why I made it. So it's the easiest way. When you read through the book, you will have a lot of these aha moments about learning and about the language itself, where you will think, okay, now I understand how to get fluent. All right. So again, there are two general ways you can do it. The first is try to learn something a little bit and then practice repeating that. Like you're trying to learn and then basically develop fluency by speaking. And what's actually happening in that situation is you're actually hoping to learn things more, although people don't really think about it that way. They think like, I need to speak, but they're not really thinking about it so deeply, like in a conversation. Okay, it's actually me learning things from other people that develops my certainty, which is what is really building fluency. So yes, you do get a little bit of practice, like in the sense of if I want to say a word again and again, I can do that, like butter, or I don't know, toast or whatever. I can just say some words like that. But the difference here and the key for fluent communication is that knowing how to say a word is different from feeling certain about saying it. So I might be able to repeat something well, but still not know that word, like how to use it in a sentence, or maybe understand it. Like if someone says like, oh man, I was toasted. Like I hear that from someone and it's like, wait a minute, like that's completely different from my basic understanding of the word toast. Or like, oh man, I'm toast, like I'm in deep trouble. So like hearing those different uses of the word, it helps you understand, okay, now we can actually get a stronger understanding of particular words, and that's what actually helps us speak. So if you know a lot, or if you struggle with translating as you're trying to speak, and a lot of people do, get the book. That's what it's for. It's to help solve the problem. The thing that's really different about the book is that it's the first time I've been able to take all of these ideas and put them all in one place, because I have, 700 videos and blog posts and other things like that on the channel, like on my own site. And so it's just a more complicated process for people to just come to the website and find information about how this works. So I made the book, or I am making the book, I should say, to make sure people can understand it easily. And when I'm done with it, I will also have an audiobook version. Let's see, did I get anyone else? Let's see. Leah says, what should I do to reach B2, my level B1? Well, the same thing I recommend everybody else do. You have to get certain about your vocabulary. That's it. Sita, nice to see you there. The manager is back. Been a while. Let's see. So how do I do it speaking certainly? That's what I explained in the book, like I talked about in this video. Well, Tsubasa says, Ohio Doryu. You forgot the Nobasu, Doryu Nobasu on the Doryu Sensei. Or you can just call me Tanaka, like I use when I go to restaurants out here. All right, as it says, the way of learning a language varies from one person to another. Some prefer listening or reading, or some prefer speaking. You must determine your preferences first, then practice them. Not really. What's basically happening, and I talk about this, or I mentioned this in what video was that? Now I forget. Anyway, I'll just explain it very quickly for people. So there is a theory that people think like, well, everybody has their own way of learning or whatever. And it's like, kind of in the same way that lots of people have their favorite ice cream flavors or something like that. Like maybe I like chocolate and someone else likes vanilla, and that's just like you kind of have tastes about that. But language learning doesn't work in that way, because it's a logical thing that like either you understand something or you do not. And so the goal is really certainty. Because when you feel certain about something, you can say it. If you do not feel certain about something, you will probably not say it. And this is the same for native speakers of a language. So if I have to give a speech about growing apple trees, if I don't know anything about that, I will not feel certain about giving a speech. I would be a bad person to do that because I don't know anything about growing apples. But if I do know about that, then I can, because I feel certain about how to discuss that. Now, the interesting thing is that, yes, like some people might have preferences about how they get certainty. I might like reading or writing or watching movies or, doing whatever. And so what we discover, and this is something we talk about actually in chapters 4 and chapters 5, or chapters 4 and 5, is that the particular method is less important than whether it gives you certainty about whatever it is you're learning. So like some people, and this is again, a lot of learners get caught up, they get stuck thinking about what particular method I should use to learn the language. Like, should I read or watch, or should I have private lessons or whatever, something like that. And what we discover is that you could have private lessons, but a single teacher is probably not going to prepare you very well for all of the variety you will encounter in real life. And even if you don't ever speak with anyone, you will learn or be exposed to lots of different English in movies and TV shows and whatever. So you could have a private lesson. But again, I know people who have taken private lessons for years who still don't speak. Now, that doesn't mean that a private teacher is a bad idea. It's just recognizing that what we really need is a variety of different things to make sure we understand the vocabulary very well. So ideally, if you have a private tutor, you also get examples from other people and in other situations. So you've gotten maybe fast speech and different accents and pronunciation, that kind of thing. You're getting exposed to a lot of that. So what's really happening is the certainty is the real driver of you being able to speak. So it's not like reading makes you a good speaker. It's from reading something, I could develop certainty or not. So you might read something, like if I'm trying to read a difficult Japanese novel and I'm not prepared for that, that's going to be a frustrating experience for me. Maybe it's at a level that's just too high for me. I have to look in the dictionary every 2 words to figure out what something means. That's going to be a much more difficult and frustrating and demotivating experience. So do we conclude that reading is a good idea or not? It's well, if I read something and understand it and it gives me certainty, then yeah, it's a good idea. But if it doesn't, then it's not a good idea. So we get a much more nuanced understanding, especially, and I go through this in detail in the book, that the problem is not a particular method. It's just whether that thing gives you certainty or not. But again, living in an English-speaking country, you could be getting exposed to lots of vocabulary, but it's all basically random to your brain. And just like a little kid learning, sometimes you hear the same things and you're able to understand them, but a lot of times you're not. And so we often get exposed to vocabulary, but we never really become certain about it. So we might understand things well, but still have trouble speaking. All right, so that's the basic idea. So when people tell me that each person has their own way of doing it, it's yeah, that's kind of true, but everybody has this. The whole reason you do a method is to get certainty. That's the whole point, because if you learn something and you don't yet feel confident about it, it doesn't matter. Okay? So again, it's not about reading or writing or watching or listening or any of those things. It's about do these things or a combination of them, and typically the combination is best, but is that combination the thing that's actually going to help you speak? All right, so it's not really about thinking about your own personal preferences in how you learn. It's like saying different people eat different kinds of food. Yes, but we all put the food in our mouth and digest it, and we get it the same way. So it's the same kind of idea there. The idea is making sure we actually understand something well enough to use it. That's the idea. Let's see. So Breathtaking says, thanks so much. And Hassan says, when I speak, I do focus on the context or the structure. I mean every word. Or the structure, I mean every word literally. That's interesting. Tom says, toast again. Honestly, I don't like reading. Well, if you don't like reading, again, you can, even if you never read my book, just watching my videos should really help you understand that. And we go into much more detail in the actual book for the people who are reading it. Like, you maybe probably read some things, like maybe like reading magazines, or you read things on your phone or whatever. The problem, again, is not reading. It's just like, is the information actually helpful and entertaining for you? And I hope so far, anyway, the book has been for people. It's not like a typical textbook. It's a story you actually want to read, and so people are, they're asking me, when is the next chapter coming out, because they're curious to know what happens next. Tom, again, I've learned that here that we don't need to translate words anymore. And now, and this is another point I actually make in the book, that like translating isn't necessarily like a bad thing to do, but again, this is about developing fluency. So I make this point actually in chapter 5. So readers will see me talk about this, where I'm basically giving myself permission to translate when I need to, because sometimes like I need to say something, I go to a government office and I don't know what something is and I need a translation for it. I'm not like a bad person because I get a translation. But at the same time, the real mission is to develop this skill where I can understand things and develop fluency. So I can express whatever I want to say. But that's basically how that works. So don't worry if you still need to translate something. The point is more to think about how you can feel confident about your vocabulary. And so even though you have to deal with daily life and still surviving and communicating when you need to, at the same time, you're using this other system to develop confidence and fluency. Brittany says, hello, Drew. Do you think that it's impossible to have a native-like accent when adult people try to learn English? No, I don't think that's impossible at all. I mean, I can like... If I want to sound like a particular person and I spend time listening to those accents, I could learn to sound like that. Certainly wouldn't be impossible. It's just more about getting a good variety of that kind of English. So those accents or that intonation or whatever you're trying to mimic. Med says, hi there, D teacher. This is me, Said, and it's been a while since I've seen. I am glad that you are fine. I'm doing all right. What do you guys think about the book? Yes, anyone who has read it yet, please let me know. But so far, nothing negative really, which has been great. Let's see, I haven't bought the book yet, but I think it's good to get at some point. Yeah, let me know if you're waiting for anything in particular to get it. But the people who are getting the book now are like already being able to put those ideas into practice, and especially chapter 5, which should be released today. We'll see. Is it possible to have an audio version of the book? Would be good. Yes. So when I'm done with it, the reason I haven't released an audio book version is because the book isn't done, but I might need to change some chapters or move some things around or something. We'll see. So I'm building it with learners because the book is for you. I already know all this information. It's not for me. It's for you all. So if there are things that I'm not explaining clearly or whatever, you can let me know. And then the final version, I think I might actually have, because this goes along with the theme of the book, a couple of different audio versions of the book. We'll see if I decide to do that or not, but I'm thinking about it. Let's see. I feel like a bad person when I translate something. Yeah, don't feel bad about that. Remember, you're still like, I'm not trying to be a monk or a saint or something where I'm like, okay, I'm only going to learn this one way and make my life difficult. Like I specifically talk about this in chapter 5. The goal is not to give you a new way of learning that's going to make your life difficult. It's like, go ahead, keep living your life, doing what you're doing, but at the same time, start learning like this and experiment with this new way that I'm showing you to do things, and I think you will enjoy it. Eunice says, hello from Morocco. All right, and Sergio says, bye, thanks for your tips. Thanks, Drew. All right, look at that. We got to the end, and hopefully people have enjoyed it. So even if you do not get the book, you can still start putting these ideas into practice, the same things that I'm talking about in all of my videos. The book is really for people who want to understand the whole system, and actually, surprisingly, lots of people who are members of Fluent for Life have gotten the book. That's been really surprising to me, but I'm, certainly happy that they do. But it's mostly people who really want to understand how the system works, so that way they can get more of this themselves, whether they're learning with me or on their own or whatever. But if you'd like to get the book, you can get it and join the people who are reading it before it's actually released as even a physical thing. I'd like to release it, and I'll probably release translations of it as well at some point. We'll see. But if you'd like to get it, you can click on the link in the description below this video. But I have to get back to reading and writing, I guess, so I can release it. Be careful of the heat. Yeah, it's pretty hot over here. But yes, thank you again for joining me. I'm going to get back to editing so I can release this hopefully later today. That's the goal. We'll see if I complete it or not, but should be today or tomorrow at the latest. Have a fantastic day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.